Greetings, fellow readers, Rambling Collector here, and welcome back to episode 5 of Let's Read. So, for the subject of this video, I thought we would read the first chapter of a book that I have read and reviewed on this channel in the past. So, for the subject of this video, we're going to be reading chapter 1 of Exile of the Sky God by P. Anastasia. Now, Anastasia is someone whom I have met at least twice now already, and they've been an absolute delight to talk to about their works, why they do what they do, but more importantly, the sheer variety of subject matter that they cover with their various works is amazing. I reviewed 2 of their works thus far on this channel, with a 3rd one on the way as of right now. And I am personally very excited to talk about it as it is their newest work. But one of the biggest things that I will say that is their greatest strength is, as a matter of fact, the sheer variety of works that they do. For instance, you have one, which is Fluorescence, which is a sci-fi romance series, with each book now being compressed into one large paperback, that each book is from the perspective of a different main character, and their interactions with the alien species that has them kind of by the ropes in a way. Whereas this one here, Exile of the Sky God, dives into Egyptian mythology. It takes place from the main character perspective of Horus the Sky God, which is very, very interesting in my opinion, because Egyptian mythology is kind of brushed over when you think about it. We hear a lot about Greek and Roman mythology, but never a lot about the others, like Norse or Egyptian, for instance. And I was very fascinated to check out this book when I first got my hands on it. And now I hope to share some of that joy with all of you. So that being said, I think I've talked long enough. Let's get started with chapter 1. Majestic amber and virulent copper feathers draped my body, each crowned with pure ivory fringe. I envisioned sparkling plumage sprouting from my shoulders, spreading toward my wrists like wildfire, and igniting my skin with a shimmer of nature's finest ebon tones. I would have them soon, the most glorious wings, in the vein of my mother Isis, whose brilliant iridescent feathers glittered like rare gems and whose wings cradled me when I was a babe. They would be granted to me at my coronation ceremony, where I would also be appointed to the position of Sky God. Soon, very soon. I gazed out at the Egyptian horizon, watching as clouds broke in two, yielding as Amun-Ra's aura swept across the land, his all-consuming rays signaling to the world that it was time to begin anew. The sun god, Amun-Ra, reigned supreme over sky, earth, and all the deities in the palace of the gods. Lotus blossoms flourished and thrived with his blessings, or shriveled and shrank away at his touch. Wheat and papyrus rustled in the wind and swayed in worship when he cast his glow upon them. Even the mighty Sobek, powerful and fearless god of the river Nile, with his weathered, ferocious crocodile form, lowered his head to the king of the gods. Ra was the head ruler of all Egypt, the one god whose likeness and name the pharaohs assumed, hoping to attain a fragment of his immortality. Ra came into being with the face of a falcon, but chose to assume the features of a mortal man, in order to set himself apart from the animal-faced lesser gods. Although he exhibited no other physical animal features, Ra was anything but a man. His eyes glistened with fire, golden light that mirrored the sun's volatile nature, and he towered above us all, possessing astonishing height, vigor, and poise. As our king, he appointed and commanded a court of other gods to do his bidding. Some were his brothers and some his sisters, but most were children and grandchildren. All had been molded not in his image, but as anthropomorphic beings with features reflective of their duties. The warrior goddess and protector, Bastet, had the face of a fierce lioness. She watched over both Ra and the current residing human pharaoh. The powerful, formidable lioness goddess also had a fondness for me, and was like a mother when my own became but a phantom in the light. Bastet kept her feelings secret, as Ra forbade gods to favor one over another. By his decree, any and all allegiances or offspring were to transpire only from cosmic obligation and necessity, and deviants would face severe punishment. As protector of the crown of Egypt, Bastet's loyalties were to rest solely upon that priority, not consorting with me. Tauret, the hippopotamus-faced goddess of birth and fertility, had a belly eternally round with child, and she carried with her always the joys and burdens of childbirth. Then there were Isis and Osiris, overseers of mortal life and death, whose faces closely resembled a common man and woman. Isis was the supreme mother of all, caretaker of children, wives, and mothers, but her overwhelming duties robbed my childhood of her presence. As guardian and ruler of the underworld, Osiris ensured that justice be granted to every soul who deserved it. Together, they had a single child, me. Preordained to become god of the sky, I was forced to don the guise of a falcon's face, even though both my parents appeared human. As I grew, I observed and studied mortals from afar, the same mortals I would someday oversee, and I struggled with a myriad of audacious thoughts. Why was I forced to bear the face of a bird, when neither of my revered parents had to do the same? My mother's wings flaunted the colors of malachite, lapis, garnet, and turquoise, and each feather was trimmed in pure gold. My golden falcon eyes were mighty and bright, but set upon a backdrop of plain, pale feathers in browns and beiges. Who would worship a god of such simple features? Today I would become a true god. Ra would surrender guardianship of the sky to me, and my feathers would change. Today marked my coming of age, and it felt long past due. In preparation for my coronation, I shed my avian face and assumed the form of an exotic human. Those whom, I had been told, traveled across the ocean from the far northwest. Though rare, other gods had witnessed foreign voyagers with hair as fair as wheat, and it was my wish to stand out amongst a crowd of beastly gods. "I am ready," I called to Bastet, who waited for me past the threshold of my chamber. The clinking of bracelets signaled her approach, and I turned to face her. "You look beautiful today," I said, reaching up to stroke the back of my hand across her fluffy, sand-colored muzzle. Her eyes narrowed joyously, and her fingers could not hide the gentle blush of color flushing her cheeks. "You are kind, Taurus, but you should withhold compliments while in the presence of a god." I forked my fingers through her beaded headdress. Golden fur from her short mane prickled around her crown, and her ears twitched. "I will be a true god soon, Bastet." I tipped my head defiantly. "Then I will say what I please, and even Ra will not stop me." "You will never be able to say what you please," she replied firmly. "You must always be wary of your words." "You will see my power rise with the sun. Once Ra bestows upon me my fated gifts, the wheat and barley will cower before me. The ibex will bow their mighty antlers, and the great ibis shall follow me wherever I go." Black swelled in Bastet's eyes, and she lifted her paws to clasp my forearms. "Please do not speak this way in front of Ra," she said, the pitch of her voice rising. "I have no children of my own, but you are like a son to me. Ra is strict, and he will not tolerate your insolence if you test him." I shifted my body and forced her paws away, quickly adjusting my bejeweled armlets. "I will be fine, Bastet. Wait and see." I gestured for her to follow me. We traveled down a grand limestone hall as we headed for the courtyard, a place of ceremony and gathering, flanked on both sides by enormous paintings featuring animals from the mortal realm below. Though I had seen it hundreds of times, I paused to more closely admire a colorful image depicting an ibis with its massive wings spread wide as it soared over the river Nile. I brushed my fingers across raised strokes of paint and grinned. "May I remind you," Bastet whispered, "Ra has little patience. We should hurry." "Yes," I nodded and heaved a sigh. Several demigods, those with less jurisdiction in the land of mortals and more in the kingdom of gods, waited outside the courtyard. As I passed, they bowed shallowly toward me, which provoked me to sneer. Trapped in the limbo of unacquired power, but destined to attain it, I was not quite above, nor below them in stature, yet. After the ceremony they would bow fully to me, and their foreheads would touch the floor when I passed, or they would pay a grave price for disrespecting a god. I approached the covered entryway to the outside courtyard and drew the scarlet linen curtains to the side to enter. As I released them behind me, I overheard Bastet apologizing to the demigods for my actions. She should not have. The courtyard was vast and laden with thrones arranged in a wide circle around a demanding centerpiece, an enormous cauldron burning with eternal white fire, fueled by the imprisoned Kas, life forces of Ra's adversaries. Gods surrounded me, with Ra having already taken his place in the tallest throne at the center of the circle. My mother, Isis, sat on the throne to his left, and the throne to his right was empty. Awaiting his protector, Bastet, who immediately moved past me to claim her seat. My father could not attend because he could not abandon his duties of overseeing the souls of dead mortals, not for a moment. The crowd let out a gasp as I approached, and Ra's eyes widened with disbelief. "Why do you wear the face of a man?" Ra spoke, his deep, booming tone resonating through my sandals and into my bones. Isa smiled and then rose as if to stand to greet me, but Ra swung out an arm to stop her. "Stay," he ordered, and she swiftly lowered her face and cupped her hands together in her lap, easing back down to her seat. "Horus," Ra raised his voice again, "I demand to know why you came to your coronation with the features of a mortal man, and a northerner no less." "You assumed the face of a mortal pharaoh, always," I replied, lifting my chin. "So, too, do my mother and father. Why should I not?" A reddish glow ignited in Ra's eyes, and he pushed up off his throne to stand and point a rigid finger my way. "How dare you question your king?" A ring of colored flame swirled around his hand. Isa slid from her throne and onto her knees beside him. "Please, my lord," she cried out. "He is only a child and does not understand humility." "I am no child, mother." I curled my hands into fists. "I have not been a child for several centuries, despite you and our lord's desire to suppress my powers as if I am one." Seeing my mother, in her pure, vivid white dress, groveling on her knees before him, disgusted me. Ra glanced at her as she cowered before him, and he shook his head. "Humans cannot fly," he answered, glaring at me. "My mother has wings, and they are the most exquisite I have ever seen, and yet she presumes the body and face of a human woman. She is no less powerful because of it." "You are," Ra began, speaking through gritted teeth, "you will be god of the sky. The humans will expect the face of a regal bird, not a boy." My jaw tightened at his comment, but I held back my pride. I wanted power, and I would not get it if I continued arguing with my king. "I will do as he wishes, mother," I said softly, kneeling beside the cauldron in the center of the room. It angered me to have to relinquish my ideal face, but I had no choice. Bastet was correct to assume Ra would chastise me for it. I exhaled slowly and allowed my features to transform back into their natural ones. My face growing longer and my nose sharper, swooping down to form a hard, black predator beak. Feathers pierced through my flesh and cloaked the fair golden hair I had become fond of, and my eyes turned dark brown as my pupils enlarged. "Now stand and return to your throne," Ra demanded of Isis. She tried to compose herself as she stood and sat again, avoiding eye contact as she folded her brightly colored wings across her lap. Ra took a step down from his throne and approached me, raising his hands high above my head. I wanted to look up, but thought wiser and remained where I was, my eyes to the floor. "As king," he started, a humming noise sounding above my head, "I decide how magic is distributed." The marble flooring did not reflect great detail, but with my sharp falcon sight, I could see that he was conjuring an amulet of power, my birthright, and the stone that would grant me my place amongst the gods. Red light circled the piece, casting a crimson glow around me. I held my breath as he lowered his hands and brought it closer. Then a loud crack rang out, and I lifted my face to see my amulet, the entirety of my preordained destiny, sliding across the floor. I scrambled after it and scooped the massive garnet cavacone into my shaking hands. A deep crack had split the stone down the middle, but its gold setting kept the pieces clinging together. "What have you done?" I roared at him, cupping the shattered stone between my fingers. "My powers." I gasped and struggled to find the words as anger swelled in my chest. "This amulet is my birthright." "And it is my right to decide when you are worthy of it," Ra scowled. "If you speak one more word against me in my own court, I will retract the piece altogether." He pointed at me, and I pulled the damaged necklace close to my chest. "No," I muttered, clasping it tightly. Behind Ra, my mother had her hands over her mouth and her eyes wide with fear. Beside her, Bastet fought to hide her own look of disbelief and horror. I did not need their pity. "Ra, please." I looked away and lowered my voice. "Please, my lord, might you reconsider?" "You are not ready," he replied with a hiss, and turned away from me. "Let it be known to all that those seeking independence and individuality within my court will face it alone and powerless. Do not challenge me. I have bestowed upon you all your titles, and I can strip you of them." He turned to me and whispered, "We are finished here. Go." Then he said to the crowd, "The ceremony is over." I heard shuffling as the other gods cleared out of the room, but I could not find the strength to raise my head to watch their disappointed gazes judge me in passing. All I could do was remain on my knees, clutching the shattered semblance of my true destiny in my hands, unable to subdue my shuddering breaths. After the room had quieted down, a bright white dress dragged across the floor. My mother approached and bent down to embrace me around my shoulders. "My dear son, "Do not be upset with our lord," she said softly, brushing her fingers through my feathers. "He is just, and there is goodness in all his actions." Isis believed that to be true of everyone. I did not. "How could you let him do this to us, Mother?" I looked up into her brown eyes. "How could you allow him to disgrace me like that?" I could not stop my voice from quaking. I deserved that power." "And you will gain it all back, in time," she said, prying the amulet gently from my fingers. "I promise you." Cold metal against my bare skin made my feathers perk up momentarily as my mother bestowed upon me my amulet, adjusting the gold beads near my shoulders and shifting the cabocone so it was centered below the base of my neck. "What am I to do with this useless thing?" I touched the stone and grimaced as my fingers grazed the fissure in the center. Her hands rested on my shoulders in a way that they had not since I had been very small. "Prove yourself to him, and he will make this right." I wanted to take my human form again, to show her that I could be strong, even in the wake of defeat, but I was too weak. "I am sorry, Mother." I reached up to wrap my arms around her and bury my face against her long ebony hair. "You will always be forgiven, Horace. Come now." She stood and tugged at me to make me stand. "You must rest and prepare for your new duties tomorrow." I staggered to my feet and looked around the empty room. Even Bastet had been forced to leave me in order to save face in front of our king. I would not blame her, though. She had always been my strongest ally and closest friend, despite her assigned loyalty to Ra. "You are right, Mother," I said, taking in a deep breath and rolling my shoulders back. "I will prove myself to him, at any cost." And that is Chapter 1, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And if you want to buy this book for yourself after hearing this chapter reading, I will leave a link to it, or at least the Amazon link to it, in the description down below, as well as a link to the author's website itself, especially if you want to give them support. Personally, I would highly recommend Anastasia's works. She has not disappointed me so far, and I cannot wait to review more of her works in the future, since I currently have 2 of them, as a matter of fact, coming up soon. Poe Prophecies and Fates of Flame. And I hope you all will enjoy this author's works as much as I have, and if you really want to check out my thoughts on this book as well as Fluorescence, those will be available in the playlist for independent authors if you want to check them out for yourself, or if you would prefer the whole wider range, check out the playlist Book Rambles. I promise you, you will not be disappointed, and there is plenty for all of you there. But if you enjoyed this, I'm glad you stuck around. And if you like this video, feel free to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, or subscribe if you're interested for future videos like this. I hope to see you all again in the next episode of either Let's Read or in the next book review. In the meantime, though, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, fellow readers. This is Rambling Collector, signing off.